All right, hello and welcome to this training on effective meetings. So this one is going to be a little bit shorter than most because part of an effective meeting is being respectful of people's time. And there's only so much to go through in terms of practical advice. So we're going to go ahead and jump into this. Thank you all for coming today. All right, so we're going to start with why we meet in the first place. So we talked before about how one of the core tools of organizing is the one-on-one conversation, because it's through one-on-ones that you build relationships with people and get to know each other's self-interests. And when we are clear on our own self-interests and the self-interests of the people that we're working with, we can make sure that we're all working together for the same goal and staying on the same page. So, one-on-ones are one of the core tools of organizing. The other is a meeting, which is very similar to one-on-ones, except that it's with more people. So, meetings are about similar things. I'm going to put this on the board here. All right. Meetings are about making decisions and commitments. So making actual decisions, useful things that are gonna help us move forward, and committing to action that will help us move forward. It's also about strengthening decisions and commitments that have already been made. All right. Strengthening relationships. So just like a one-on-one strengthens a relationship with one other person, meetings strengthen relationships as a team, as a group. And so when we meet together and when we work together, we are building working relationships with each other, you know? And sometimes we're also building friendships with each other. But in terms of organizing, we're going to focus on the more public relationship aspect. All right. And then the other thing is building community power. These are the three purposes of a meeting, the three overall goals. This is why we meet, to make decisions and commitments, to strengthen relationships with each other, and to build community power. All right, so meetings are not about, but they may still contain certain elements, such as efficient planning, making speeches, oops, generating records or minutes, you know. And these can all be important elements of meetings, but they are not the core reason that we meet. And it sometimes feels like we forget that, you know, and we end up spending all this time like tracking minutes that aren't actually going to be useful for any real purpose, and confirming them and things like that, and making speeches that are ultimately empty and don't lead to real action, and so on. And so we just want to keep in mind that meetings are not about the superficial things. They're about the actual purposes, decisions, relationships, and power. All right. So there are three reasons to meet in community organizations like this. All right. So we would meet to either plan an action, do an action, or debrief an action. All right. Does anybody here know what I mean by action when I'm talking about that in like community organizing terms?
Whatever,
Uh,
a goal.
yeah, an event, getting something done, like we're talking about putting on a rally
Yeah,
or finding a rally to go pass out flyers at.
yeah, that's right. These are good examples of actions. Actions are individual steps that we take that support an overall campaign, that move us forward along the campaign path. And so, some other examples of actions, gathering signatures is a kind of action. When we actually go out and start gathering signatures in about a month's time, we are going to be every single time people are out on the streets or just in community spaces collecting signatures. That is furthering the core goal of this campaign, which is to get enough signatures to get this on the ballot. Town halls are a form of action as well. Great for building power. They are about spreading our message and inviting new people to join the movement, and most importantly, getting feedback from people who have an interest in what it is that we're doing. And that's why we spent so much time inviting direct feedback from the people in our town halls in the early months of this campaign leading up to our policy summit. Protests can be power building actions as long as they are part of a larger strategy. So some people just want to go out and protest and yell and get that energy out, and that is fine, you know. But if it's not part of a larger strategy, it's not really an action. It's just, you know, a bunch of people making noise. Fundraisers are a good example of actions. So we need money to achieve our organization's goals. You know, social mixers as well are a type of action because they facilitate relationship building, which strengthens the campaign as a whole. And so there's a wide variety of actions that we may be doing or planning or debriefing. All right. So when we're in a meeting, because we are focused on actions and advancing the overall goal of our campaign, we want to make sure that the meeting is well ordered, that it is not chaotic. Chaos degrades our organization's power. The more order that we have within ourselves, the more efficient we're going to be, the more effective we're going to be at both communicating and actually getting things done. And so that means that there needs to be somebody who is facilitating the meeting. So facilitating is not the same as leading the meeting exactly. The facilitator is just the person there that is making sure that everything is running on schedule, that people are being heard when they need to be heard, you know, that people are like when people start to go on tangents, the facilitator brings them back in, that sort of thing, you know. And usually it is best to have more than one facilitator unless the facilitator is very experienced. It's always nice to have backup, especially when you're a little bit newer to like leading a meeting that way. And because it's a tool for organizing, we also need to understand how the meeting does advance our organization's goals. And so again, if we're planning an action, doing an action, or debriefing an action related to our campaign, then it's advancing our organization's goals. And if we're not doing one of those things, we need to seriously consider why it is that we're meeting. And we need to seriously consider why we're meeting because one of the things that we need to make sure we're doing is valuing people's time. So let me note this down on our whiteboard here. All right. So the people who attend a meeting are valuable people. You know, they're in the organization, they're working with us, and they are spending their valuable time in this meeting because they believe when they at least showed up that this meeting was in their interest, that it's going to be a useful use of their time. So we don't want to waste people's time. We want to start on time whenever possible and end on time whenever possible, and then use the time in between efficiently. So it is okay to end early if you go through your agenda more efficiently than you expected. In fact, it's better to end early than to like keep people around just to fill out meeting time. That is in nobody's interest, you know? And it's also okay to stay late as long as everybody agrees that that is still a useful use of time. Sometimes conversations end up going on longer than expected, and that's not necessarily a bad thing as long as the conversations are still related to the organization's overall goals, and we're still, you know, making decisions, building community power, and doing something related to a campaign action. All right. So we need to value people's time, and we also need to consider how the shape, whoops, of the meeting shapes the organization. The way that we meet, the way that we conduct ourselves when we're together is how our organization works. You know, when our organization is working on something, we are doing that through meetings. And so if our meetings are chaotic and disordered, if people feel like they're not being heard, if people feel like their time is being wasted, then that is the organization that we're creating. An organization that like wastes people's time and is disorderly and is not really building real power, or at the very least is not doing it as effectively as it could be. So we need to consider how our meetings shape the overall organization. And a meeting, if it actually is useful, is also worth evaluating. All right, and so we don't do this as much as we should in Respect Mo voters. We should spend more time evaluating meetings, I think, and we do get this into a lot of them, which is good. But we say that in Gamaliel that anything worth doing is worth evaluating. Gamaliel, again, is the organizing tradition that I come from. And so it is always worth it to take at least a few minutes at the end to check on how people, felt about the meeting and how they feel it could be going better in the future. And so we'll look at the Gamaliel style evaluation in more detail in a little bit, which I know that you guys have experienced before, but not everybody watching this recording has. All right. So any questions about these overall purposes before I move on? And we're honestly almost like halfway through the training already. No? All right. Okay, great. Fantastic. Okay. So let's talk about the stages of a meeting. All right. So before the meeting is even planned, we need to have a meeting with yourself. And I've got two of you here being my examples for today. Josh and Tony, can you tell me why you think it's important to have a brief meeting with yourself before doing anything relating to a meeting?
So that you're not surprised or caught off guard by any of the content of your meeting. Be comfortable with the agenda.
Yep. And Tony, do you have anything? You are
You're
muted, by the
muted.
way.
Organize your thoughts for clear presentation.
Yes, that's right. Organize your thoughts, make sure that you are prepared, that you know what the purpose is and what's roughly going to happen. So yeah, make sure that you understand why the meeting is in your self-interest and what you want to see happen as a result of the meeting. Taking literally just a minute or two, like sometimes less than that, to think through the whole purpose of this meeting in your head and whether it's actually worth your time is an important first step before you do anything. All right. So let me actually add, step 1 here. All right. So step 1, meeting with yourself. Step 2 is the pre-meeting. And the pre-meeting is the planning stage. All right, so this is when you actually figure out what's going to happen in the meeting, how it's going to run, and why. All right, and this is the exercise that we're going to do in just a few minutes here. Which we're most likely not going to record, but we're going to use one of your meetings as an example as we go through and replan your weekly department meeting and make sure that it's working as well as it can. All right. So let me go ahead and add some bullets here. All right. So in the planning the meeting stage, the pre-meeting, this is primarily for planning. We're going to do a number of things. We're going to set an agenda. All right. Can either of you tell me why you think that an efficient agenda is worth doing, is worth having, getting ready? My two
Keep
examples.
it on target.
Be on target? Yeah.
Keep-
Yeah. Well, sorry, say that again, Tony.
Yeah, keeps you on target.
Yeah, keeps you on target. That's right. Josh, do you have anything?
It makes sure that you're aware of the time frame and that everything that needs to be covered can be covered.
Yep, that's right. Yes. Yeah, and that's the biggest reason right there, because again, we want to respect people's time in these meetings. And so thinking ahead of time about how much time you're going to need to spend on any given topic helps make sure that we are using people's time effectively and efficiently. All right. So setting an agenda is important. That's going to be like part of the whole planning process. By the end of planning, you should have a clear agenda. All right. Assign and prepare roles. So a meeting that consists primarily of just one person talking isn't really a meeting. It's more of a seminar or a training like this. I'm occasionally asking you questions, but it's me doing most of the talking because I am teaching something here. But for a power building organization, a power building meeting, we don't want one person doing all the talking. The whole point of getting together is to invite input and get people's opinions so that we can be more effective together than we would be alone. And so that means having a number of roles prepared. All right. And the roles don't have to be particularly complex. It's often something as simple as, could you please take 5 minutes to update the group on this particular topic, since we know that you've been working on this and you know a little bit more about it than everybody else, just something along those lines. And like, it can be something that even if you would be fine rolling through, 30 minutes worth of meeting content on your own, just splitting that up amongst other people. For one, it gives them an additional reason to be there, to be present, if you are having an issue of like people are not attending your meetings or people are drifting away, one really great way to ensure that people attend your meeting is to give them a role at the meeting, give them a responsibility, and then they're almost certainly going to show up. Can't make any guarantees for anybody else, but at the very least, the people who have roles are going to show up. And they're most likely to show up if we prepare them for those roles. All right. So this is not a thing where we just randomly grab someone and be like, hey, Joe, could you like do this thing here? And then Joe's like, wait, what's the thing? We need to actually make sure that they understand what they're being asked to do and feel prepared to do it. And that often means taking a little bit of time before the meeting to actually go over the role with that person. All right. And that can sometimes be as simple as like, 5 minutes, 2 minutes, even depending on how simple the role is. But we want to make sure that anybody who has a role feels like they're prepared to actually carry it out. All right. In addition to assigning and preparing roles, we need to figure out who should attend. So this is like who is going to be invited to the meeting, who's going to be a part of this, who is important to have present, And so the folks that are important to have present for an outreach department meeting, for example, which focuses on spreading the word about our organization, are not the same people that need to be present for a field meeting, a field department meeting, who focuses on like sending people out into the field to collect signatures, There may be some crossover, but odds are it's going to be a different set of people that should be attending that meeting. So one of the reasons that we want to determine who should actually attend is, again, we want to respect people's time, and we want to make sure that we are respecting people's self-interest as well. We don't want to invite people to something that they really don't need to be at. That should feel like common sense, but it doesn't always. Sometimes people are just thinking we need to get more folks out, and not really thinking about who those folks should be. And when we determine who should attend, we also want to make sure that we are thinking about who's going to get them there. So who's responsible for notifying those people that the meeting is happening and inviting them and making sure that they're aware of the time and all of that. Who's responsible for invitations and reminders? So that's an important factor here. All right. Also part of the pre-meeting is anticipate problems and solutions. So problems are likely to arise in meetings, and we need to think about what might actually come up. Is there going to be a section of the meeting that might be confusing to new people, for example? And we're going to talk more about that in like just a moment here. Is there a section of the meeting that if we don't prepare well might just go a little bit awkwardly and might confuse people? What problems might arise? It could be something as simple as like, do we have enough parking for people outside the meeting space if it's an in-person meeting? That's not something that we usually need to worry about in Respect Mo Voters, since we do most of our stuff on Zoom, statewide organization and all. But like parking is something that we do need to consider when we do have in-person meetings. And you in the outreach department you my two example people here are planning meetings for new folks to show up at, and you need to consider things like parking. We'll talk more about what to consider in the actual meeting space in step 3 here. All right. So as part of anticipating problems and solutions, we want to consider how do we engage new people? How do we make sure that folks who are in the meeting for the first time do not feel lost and feel like their presence is actually useful, that they're more than just a spectator? And like not every meeting is going to have space for every single person who attends to get involved. If we're meeting for only an hour and like 50 people show up, if we try and let everybody talk, no one's going to get much more than just like a minute to talk for the entire meeting. And so not everyone needs to talk, but we need to think about how new people will be engaged. We also need to think about how new people might be lost by what's going on in the meeting. So, for example, if we're using insider language and references to even recent events that a new person is unlikely to know about, they're going to feel a little bit confused and lost. And so if we are talking about stuff like that, if we are using insider language, we want to make sure that we're frequently defining it for new people. And if that is cumbersome, if you don't like defining insider language over and over again, then don't use insider language. You know, I try not to use organizing terms as much as possible because, like, organizing, community organizers use a lot of common terms in ways that require some explanation. And so I don't want to have to explain that every time I use a phrase. Like, I mean, honestly, even a phrase as simple as building community power, you kind of have to define a little bit. So, yeah, we want to make sure that we're being careful about that. Similarly, new people are not going to be particularly engaged and are going to be made to feel like outsiders if we have arcane procedures. So right now I'm thinking in my mind about Robert's Rules. All right, Robert's Rules of Order. This is the set of rules for meetings that involve, like, keeping minutes and, calls to order and requiring someone to make a motion in order to talk about something and also have somebody second that motion. There's a bunch of insider language like calling a point of order, which is a great example of why arcane rules are kind of horrible for meetings like this, because calling a point of order is not actually building power. It's not talking about anything related to an action. It's literally just in Robert's Rules. Calling a point of order is saying, hey, someone's not following Robert's rules, and bringing them back in. So that some organizations use Robert's Rules. I think they're crazy for doing that, but hey, it makes them feel like they're organized. And to be fair, Robert's Rules are very, very orderly. They're just also extremely tedious and disengaging. So, all right. And also part of engaging new people, if people don't understand what's happening, if they are confused, if they are lost because of insider language and arcane procedures, they are not likely to return, especially if they're not asked their opinion. And so we want to make space for new folks to speak up if they have something to say, if they're comfortable doing so. All right. We also need to consider, how do we engage existing team members? All right. So what is the reason for these team members showing up? Is it actually in their interest to be there? Is there actually something useful for them to do? So think ahead of time about what there is for your team members to do. The most important thing, the most useful thing, in my view, of getting a bunch of people together is just to ask their opinions, ask their views, so that all of our opinions can together strengthen one another and create something more powerful than we could create alone. We also want to make sure that there are just general opportunities for them to meaningfully contribute, and so asking their opinion is a big type of that, or a big part of that, but there are other ways to contribute as well. And we also need to clarify why we believe it's in our team members' self-interest to be present. If we don't need to do this every single time, but at least periodically say to people, listen, it's the reason that we want you here is because this is a useful thing that we can do together. And we think that you'll be, that you will benefit from being a part of this conversation as much as the rest of us. When we meet for our Monday afternoon leadership check-ins, for example, when all of our statewide department chairs get together, the goal of those meetings is to make sure that every department chair is on the same page about what all the other departments are doing, at least in that week, and give people an opportunity to actually coordinate with each other. Create a space for people to talk about, well, this is a problem that I have, and I need the opinion of this other person, this other department. What do you think we can do to fix this? And so that's why it's useful for statewide department chairs to attend those leadership check-ins, because it's not just about giving an update for yourself. It's also about hearing what everyone else is doing and making sure that you can support each other. So that's an example of explaining why it's useful to be in a particular meeting. All right, so this is all the stuff that we generally want to think about in the pre-meeting stage as we're just planning it, setting everything up. Do we have any questions about this before I move on? All righty, excellent. All right, step 3 is the actual meeting. All right. So once we've met with ourselves to make sure that we understand why we're setting up this meeting in the first place, once we've had a pre-meeting to actually plan what's going to happen and why, then we need to have the actual meeting. So I'm going to start with a very practical and physical consideration, which is just the meeting space. All right. What kind of space is appropriate to a meeting? And this depends strongly on what kind of meeting it is. So very first consideration to have is how much space do you need? How many people are you expecting to show up? And when we are planning a specific meeting space, we want to make sure that it is large enough for everyone that we expect to attend, but not much larger than that. And the reason for that is that let's say you have a meeting with 50 people. That was the example that I used earlier. Okay. That can feel like a whole lot of people. If you're in like a room in a library, for example, like one of their working spaces, that room is going to be packed with 50 people, overflowing, most likely, like imagining the libraries that I have around my part of town, at least. Whereas if they were in, say, a giant auditorium that was set up to seat like 2,000 people, 50 people in that same space is going to feel tiny. It's going to feel like nothing, you know? And so you don't want the space to be too cavernous. You don't want it to be too small either. It should be large enough, but not too large. And sometimes this comes down to just like how many chairs are set up. You know, the couple of times that I did a presentation at one of our policy town halls in the first couple of months of this campaign, I set up fewer chairs than I thought that we would need, making sure that we had other chairs nearby, because that means that when people come in, they fill the existing chairs pretty quickly, and then anybody new, you start putting out more chairs, and so you have just enough for the people there. And so then even if you were in a relatively large room, if every seat is filled that's available in that room, still feels pretty busy, you know? That's just like a psychological thing for meeting spaces. It just, yeah. Best to have too few chairs and then add more. Just make sure that you know where to get more chairs. All right. Then there's the actual setup. So how are the chairs set up? You know, or if you're on a Zoom meeting, what's the expectation? Is it going to be more of a seminar type thing where one person's doing a lot of talking and getting people updated on stuff, or is it going to be more of a discussion? And if there is going to be more of a discussion, does it warrant breaking out into smaller groups? So in Zoom, there are breakout rooms that we can set up for that. In a physical meeting space, we can just move chairs around to create smaller groups to talk. And in general, smaller groups are better at having like meaningful discussions with each other than large groups. It's a lot easier to have a meaningful conversation with 10 or fewer people than it is with like 15 or 20 or more. There's also a factor of, you know, if it is more of a discussion type meeting, it's probably better to set up the chairs in a circle or a semicircle. Whereas if it is more of a seminar type thing, then theater seating is appropriate, where everyone's facing one direction, somebody's up high where everybody can see them. All right, so that's something that we want to consider. What are we meeting about, and what is the ideal setup to facilitate the purpose of that meeting? All right. We also need to consider and be very clear about the start and end times. This again goes back to respecting people's time. So if you want people to show up on time, you have to tell them what time is the right time to show up, you know? And if you want people to be able to plan their lives around, they need to be able to accurately predict when the meeting is going to end. If people think that a meeting is going to be shorter than it actually is, then they're going to start wandering out like halfway through maybe, you know, or certainly before the end. And it never feels great to anybody present in a meeting when a bunch of people start wandering away before it's actually over. You know, certainly doesn't feel good to the people that are leading that meeting. Nobody likes a walkout. And that's far less likely to happen if people know when they're going to be able to leave. We need to have an agenda available. So this is, we would have prepared an agenda. We want to have an agenda that people can actually see. So for a physical meeting space, having this printed out and at the very least posted someplace visible where people can see it from anywhere in the room will help. That might just mean having it up on a slide, you know, in the slideshow and just going through it real quick with folks. Or it could mean having an actual printed agenda to pass out to people. Yeah, that depends on what is more appropriate for this particular meeting setup. But yeah, having a timed printed agenda that everybody can see allows people to very quickly determine how much of the meeting is in their self-interest and what parts they need to take a special interest in. All right. So the meeting itself, we should make sure that if we did a good job of assigning and preparing people for roles, then we need to make sure there's actual space in the meeting for those roles to have meeting. And so that might mean having a microphone for somebody with a role, a microphone ready to pass around, It might just be making sure that people know when it's their turn to talk, something as simple as that. So make sure that people are clear on what their roles are in the meeting. That also comes into play when you are trying to encourage group discussion with somebody who was not part of the planning process for the meeting. Just being very clear, okay, this is now discussion time. Everyone can feel free to pipe in. That tells them right then, okay, well, right now my role in the meeting is to be a part of this discussion. If I have something useful to say, at least. Not everyone feels comfortable speaking up, that's fine. All right, and the meeting should also be disciplined. Again, meetings should be well organized. They should not be chaotic. And discipline literally just means you've got a facilitator there that is reminding people of hey, we're here to meet for a reason. We have an agenda and we want to stick to it so that we're being respectful of people's time. And so just having somebody there to speak up and bring people back in when tangents start happening, or if somebody is interrupting with a question or comment at an inopportune time. Yeah, that's another factor. Also, by the way, the issue with people interrupting with inopportune questions and comments can be greatly avoided if people can see on a printed agenda that there is a Q&A session later. People are less likely to pipe up if they know that they'll have a chance to ask questions a little bit later on. All right, so these are the key elements of the actual meeting itself. Do we have any questions here before I move on to the last step of the meeting process? All righty. Okay, great. All right, and step 4 is the evaluation. And the Gamaliel style evaluation usually happens in the last 5 minutes of a meeting. We're going to talk through how my organizing tradition does these evaluations, but evaluations don't have to look this way. The purpose of an evaluation is just to take a moment, think about how the meeting went and how it could have gone better. All right. And so this Gamaliel style setup is a way to do that in most cases quickly and fairly easily in a structured way that people can anticipate once they've been through it a couple of times. All right. So the Gamaliel style evaluation has 4 parts. You probably remember that we start with a feeling word. And so a feeling word is just going around and asking everybody for one word to describe how they're feeling about that meeting at the end of it, and we want people to be honest with these feelings. So if their feeling is confused, that's a good thing to know. If their feeling is excited, that's also a good thing to know. It means that we did things well. Confusion means that we probably could have done things better, at least for that particular person. If it's a particularly large meeting space, we don't need to get a feeling word from absolutely everyone. Again, in a 50-person meeting, that would take up a lot of time. But simply giving everyone the opportunity to pipe up and say their word is a good place to start. We also typically want to follow up on at least 1 or 2 feeling words that people provide. So in the example of someone providing the word confusion, if they're feeling confused, we want to know why they're confused. What was confusing, And so after everyone else has had a chance to say their feeling word, come back to the confusion one, ask why, Or if somebody is saying excited, we might want to know what they're excited about. Or if they just use a particularly uncommon or unexpected word, it's like, oh, what on earth do you mean by that? Sometimes you have no freaking idea, and it's like you just want to know. And so, yeah, just give people a moment to explain any feeling words that you are more interested yourself in understanding. All right, next step is roles and investments. All right, so this portion is where we go through each of the people that had a role in the meeting, and we ask those folks how they feel they did in their role. All right. And once they've had a chance to say how they feel they did, then we open the floor to constructive feedback from other people. We give other people a chance to invest in the person who had that role by saying, here's a thing that you did well, you should do that again in the future, or here's a thing that you could have done better, and here's a way that it could be better, or something to consider, you know. And constructive feedback is constructive. It's not tearing people down. It's not being like, you freaking suck at this, and I'm going to tell you all the ways why. All right. It's saying, it's yeah, we're not trying to be dicks to each other. You know, we're trying to actually give useful feedback that is not going to tear anyone down. That's going to build them up, even when it's something, you know, negative that they could have done better. All righty. Let's see here. Okay. Yeah. So the roles investment part starts with asking each person who had a role how they felt they did, then giving everyone else an opportunity to provide feedback. And we want to go through each of those people more or less in order. That's usually the way that I do it, but it doesn't have to be in the order that the people with roles appeared in the meeting. All right. All right, step 3 of the evaluation is tensions. So this is an opportunity to just acknowledge any tensions that people have. If there is tension in the room, it is best to get that out in the open. Whoops, didn't mean to pull away from that. There we go. Best to get that out in the open and address it rather than just let it stay bottled up, you know? And so tensions can be good or bad. It could be something that we are anxious about. Maybe at the end of a meeting, someone is feeling tense, like, we spent a lot of time planning, but I'm still a little nervous. I'm not sure if we can actually get this done. That is a fair tension to acknowledge. And it's probably, if they have that tension, it's probably not the only person in the room that does. And so taking a moment to be like, yeah, that is a concern, but we will be able to get this done if this, and this happens, you know, and just acknowledging that helps to clear that. It could also be something positive. I've given the example of excitement and anticipation as types of tension before, you know, like I'm anticipating how this might go. You know, I'm excited to see how it happens, and I hope that it's not a disaster, you know, like tensions can be a little bit dual like that as well. All right. Not everyone's going to feel comfortable being fully honest about tensions, but the more people see that we're not going to jump on folks that have a more negative tension, the more open people will feel with being honest about this kind of stuff. And the more honest they are, the better for us, because the better the organization is going to function. Again, addressing tension is the best way to deal with it. All right. Let's see here. The final step is political learning. And this is a step that is for the evaluator themselves to do. And so the idea of these evaluations is that we are learning something from them. We have some kind of takeaway from the meeting. And so the political learning is just a moment where the person running the evaluation says one thing that they learned, one takeaway that they have, you know. This is sometimes a little bit difficult to improvise in the moment, but it is useful to think ahead a little bit about this if you know that you're going to be doing the evaluation. You know, what is the useful takeaway that I can apply to future meetings? It can be something that you like is a new realization, or it can be a maybe something that you already knew, but you gained a new perspective on, you know, or was reinforced in a way that you didn't expect. So those are general examples of political learnings, but all of this can be very, very diverse. All right. And that's the last step here of the meeting process. So meet with yourself, have a pre-meeting to plan, do the actual meeting, and then evaluate the meeting. If you don't do the evaluation during the meeting, by the way, it is okay to just like get together afterwards or take a few minutes to evaluate it in a future meeting. When it comes to Robert's rules, for example, in theory, when people approve minutes at the beginning of a meeting, I think that that's what it's supposed to be, but I don't think anybody actually reads the minutes before approving them. So again, I'm just gonna keep, you know, I'm gonna keep hacking away at Robert's rules until people stop using them. There's like a simplified bare bones version, which is a little bit better, you know, but yeah, in general, it's better to actually engage people. Yeah, Josh. Question.
My audio cut out, and then I have one other question, but could you just real quick give me whatever you might have said about roles and investment. I missed it completely.
Okay, I can reiterate. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just summarize again real quick. We want to go through each person who had a role in the meeting. We want to give them an opportunity to say how they feel they did in their role, even if it's just like a one-sentence statement. And then once they say how they've done, we then want to open the floor to everybody else in the meeting to offer constructive feedback. So either something they did well or something that they could have done better. Maybe they did something like fairly well, but it still could have been done better. Like that's fine too. And so that's how the roles of investment work. We want to go through each person, in a sensible order. All right. Did you have another
Awesome.
question?
Yeah, you mentioned, especially the political learning aspect, you mentioned the person doing the evaluation speaks that step.
Yes.
For the evaluation, is it best for the chair or whoever's running the meeting to be the one running the evaluation, or is it better for someone else to have that role?
I think it's often better for someone else to have that role. And the
Cool.
reason for that is that, like, if you don't have somebody else to do it, the person facilitating the meeting is going to end up doing it by default, and that's
Mhm.
fine. That works okay. But by having somebody else do it, for one, it gives them an opportunity to have some kind of role in the meeting. If they do nothing else, at least they're leading that evaluation,
Mhm.
And the valuation is not a particularly difficult thing to learn. If somebody does forget a part of it, the facilitator can remind them how it works. And so it's a way for people to get more comfortable taking roles in meetings in general. Somebody who's maybe a little bit more timid, this is one really easy thing that pretty much anybody can do. And it's a way to start getting somebody involved. And part of the purpose of these meetings, building community power, part of building community power is developing the people that you're working with as more effective activists and leaders. And so giving them a role is a way of helping them develop their own skills, their own confidence at the very least as a leader. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yep. All right. Any other questions? No? All right. Then I must have done a great job explaining all this. All right. So that's all the key stuff that y'all need to know about running an effective meeting. We're now going to go ahead and stop recording here, and we're going to do an exercise where we replan the outreach department meeting for my 2 example folks here. So thank you all for coming, and we'll do this again next week.